Before we begin the Q&A, there is a sister who actually, she went for a walk about a month ago. I forgot where the locality was. Her name was Maryam Silla. And she got lost and they haven't found her. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to return her to her family. Ameen. And for those of you that know Sheikh Mahmoud, last I heard he was in the ICU. I don't know if he's back in his room or whatnot. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give him a full recovery. Ameen. How did you know that the Hanbali school was the right school for you to learn? So it kind of, for me, the entire university taught the Hanbali madhab, so it kind of fell in my lap. That's why I chose the madhab, because that's the one that I learned, and that was the one that was most accessible and easier for me. Al-Hijrah announced that Sheikh Ninwi is coming in July. There's no doubt that he is Sheikh. However, he is a known Sufi who engages in many additional practices. He's a known Sufi Sheikh who engages in many added practices. Why is he being invited here? So I guess the question would be, what added practices is he engaging in that we should be aware of that you find to be problematic? And what is the reason that we invited him? I find that many Sunni scholars are very shy to speak on the subject of loving Ahl Bayt and loving the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He has managed to successfully navigate both Sunni and Shi'i communities. And whenever he has spoken on the subject, I do not find the man using except ayat and using ahadith from Kutub al-Sitta, from the 6 major narrations, the 6 major books of hadith. So if someone does have a problem, I'd be interested in seeing what issues they had. The lecture is available online. But like I said, I am interested in hearing what issues or what problems individuals might have. The fact that he is Sufi, I think we've talked about Sufiya and we've talked about Tasawwuf before. If we understand that Tasawwuf and Sufiya, all of these are, I would say, spiritual practices that we are supposed to engage in our life, whether they be dhikr, whether they be dua, or whether they be daily readings that we do. This is something that is essential, something that is important to Islam, correcting our akhlaq. These things are definitely important and essential to Islam. So I don't necessarily have a problem with the term itself, but I'm curious to understand what the meaning of the questioner is behind the use of the word. Why does Al-Hijrah no longer do Quran nights? We still do Quran nights, and inshallah we will do some more after this request. So we will continue having them. I'm glad you enjoy them. If I have a human hand on my shirt, is that a problem? No, your prayer is sound. It's not an issue. Is it okay or not to have pictures of us hung up, placed throughout the house? So when it comes to pictures, like actual images, it's not going to have the same hukum as a surah, right? So because surah is something that's handmade, and even understanding that, there's a lot of khilaf on that issue. So when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said that la'anallahu al-musawwirun, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he cursed those people who make surah. The scholars, they explained this. They said, okay, what is intended by surah? What is intended by this image making? Many scholars, there's a spectrum of opinions around this. Some of them said images, just general images, whatever they might be, that have souls in them. And some of them say, no, the Prophet ﷺ is specifically talking about those individuals who make idols. And that is what is intended here. And those are the people who Allah's curse is on. And these people will be in the hellfire because they made these idols and people worship those idols. And that is the reason that he sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that. Saying that because pictures, right, digital images are very different than hand-drawn images, hanging them up, I would stay away from it just to be on the safe side. But it's not something I can say is haram. I heard that sperm itself is not najis. Is this accurate? That is correct, right? So there are 3 types of ejaculate, or 3 types of fluid that exit from a man, all right, from his private area. You can either have the medhi, or you can have mani, or you can have wadhi, right? So medhi is like pre-ejaculative fluid, or what's called Culper's fluid, which is actually very similar to wadhi, which is, but the fuqaha, they make a distinction between them. And mani is actually considered tahir. So if that gets on the clothing, it does not, if it's on the clothing itself, it will not invalidate the salah, but it should be cleaned. If someone has a wet dream, how should the tangible objects as clothes, bed sheets, and blanket be cleaned? Do they have to be cleaned? Yes, I mean it's better to clean them, but it will not invalidate the prayer. It will not invalidate the salah. Can we have newer and younger khatibs lead Jummah? Yes, absolutely. Inshallah, I'm planning on having a khatib training. So if you keep an eye on our Instagram and keep an eye out on our website so that we can train new khatib so we can have them come here. Can there be a Riyadh al-Salihin class at Al-Hijrah now that Imam Sohaib is canceled? Actually, I just spoke to him this morning. We're trying to start the class up again, bi-idhnillahi ta'ala, so hopefully we'll be starting that class up again soon, inshallah. I think Al-Hijrah has great educational opportunities, but I feel there's a disconnect with high school and college youth, perhaps some classes or program which cater to them. So whoever this questioner is, please reach out to me. If you ever have any ideas on certain classes, please feel free to suggest them. I had a sister say, hey, can we start a class on girls' issues? So, girls who are going through puberty, can we have a class specifically for girls taught by a woman? And I said, I will do it on one condition. She said, what? I said, will you bring your daughters to the class? And she said, yes. I said, okay, no problem. That's it. That's all I need. If I can guarantee you have 2 or 3 students, but I don't want people coming with ideas and then they're not sending their children to the program, or they themselves are not invested. If there's a program that we want to start here at the masjid, or if you have a recommendation, I have no problem listening. I will only always have one question: what is your contribution going to be? Will you force your son or daughter to come to that program? Will you yourself attend the program? Will you finance that program? Right? So there has to be some type of contribution. Will you volunteer to help set up, etc.? Like I said, this is always my follow-up question. Sheikh, can we do this? I'd be like, yes, absolutely we can. What role do you want to play in that program? I'm unaware if something I'm actually doing is displeasing to Allah, and have constantly made dua that if this angers Him, to keep me away from it, and from to explicitly show, yani if it is harmful, if so, away from explicitly show that if, but I don't know if I have a sign, what should I do? So the first thing you should do is you should reach out to a person of knowledge and clarify if what you're doing is actually haram. That's the first step, and that's the most important step. And then after that imam or that mufti, they can give you strategies in learning how to deal with whatever this issue is and whatever this problem is. But without knowing what it is that you're actually doing, it's difficult to give you advice. If a non-mahram auntie hugs us, is that a problem? I obviously try avoiding it, but I don't want to be rude, especially when they are friends of my mother. So the touching issue, as long as you're not the one initiating the hug, right? I think that's something that's important to keep in mind. And you're right. Like you don't want to be rude, and sometimes avoiding it or telling them no, it can create more problems and can create more issues. And they're doing it out of love, right? Obviously, they're not doing it out of desire. So that's different. And I'm not justifying it. I'm not saying that it's okay. And for all you aunties that are doing this, please stop. Obviously, there's some youth that are uncomfortable with this, so please stop doing that. And treat them like adults, right? I think there's 2 elements to it. There's a religious element where people who are not maharam should not touch each other, right? That's the first religious element, and that's very clear. The second element to this is like if we're still treating our youth like this, they feel like children, right? They feel like children, and we should treat them like adults, and we should respect them as adults and respect their space. Wallahu a'lam wa sallallahu ala khayri khalqin nabina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.